I want to welcome everybody to Healthy Seminars. I'm your moderator, Lorne Brown. I also want to thank my other moderators, Sandro Grassa and Lorianne Slowenwhite, and our presenter today, David Hartman. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So this is still part of our series of Community, Unity, Immunity, started back in March of 2020 when we all got locked down. And we just wanted to keep the community together and bringing people together, and learning good stuff. So stuff that's engaging, that's fun. So we're continuing that. Here we are continuing this, recording this in December of 2020. So the Community Unity page, Immunity page, you can get this from the home page. So anywhere on the home page, you can see there's resources. So you can just click resources, or currently on the website, we've been keeping in the middle of the page. So if you just click on the Community Unity Immunity page, it will take you to a resource page. Just to let you know, as of this time we're recording, because it just keeps popping up, we do have our big sale at Cyber Week, and that ends on Sunday, December 6, 2020. So if you're looking for on-demand recorded courses, including David Hartman's that we have on Healthy Seminars, they are 30% off with the coupon code Cyber30. Now, on the Community Unity, or what we call the resource page, we have a list of what we have going on. And so here we are in December. Here's our talk today. Just to let you know, Dave is doing another one on the 16th. We got another part of the Community Unity free talk on cosmetic facial acupuncture, also in December. And then usually the weekends where we have the CEU PDA approved courses. So we have one this weekend with Pony Chung on neuromeridian acupuncture for the torso, back, and head. And we also have part of that series from Hamid Montakab on treating acupuncture for the treatment of the hidden diseases, all based on emotion. So you can find all of this on the resource page. This page is important because if you want to watch this again, we keep up the replays for about 48 hours, except this one's going to stay up for until Sunday the 6th. And it will take you to the replay page for David when you click on the link on that calendar. And I just want to let you know, this is where you'll find it. This is also where you can register for the third of this series on the 16th. And we're keeping up number 1 of 3. We're going to keep this up on the page until the 6th as well. So you can watch this one and the first one if you missed it. So this is where all 3 will be. Just want to let you know that's where you can find it. So now let me get ready to officially introduce our topic. I'm just going to bring one thing up. I do want to let you know on Healthy Seminars, and even for these free lectures that we're doing here today for the live webinar, that they're for educational purposes only. So these are not meant to be medical advice. So do not interpret this as medical advice. This is not intended to be medical advice. This is for continuing education purposes only. And again, if you have a health condition, please do seek out a healthcare provider. Now, David, you can get your slides ready while we get started here. I just want to introduce you to David Hartman. He is a practitioner out of Australia. He is a teacher. He's got courses I mentioned on Healthy Seminars. He also teaches at institutions, and he has written books. And the one that this topic is coming from is his book called The Principles and Practical Applications of Acupuncture Point Combination. If you see anywhere APC, that's his Acupuncture Point Combination acronym. So if you see APC, that's what it's about. And we were chatting about doing the figure 8 an affinity shape with your needling. And I noticed there was a chapter in David's book, and he started explaining it to me. And I said, this is really good stuff. Would you mind sharing this just in a mini lecture for our audience? He said, sure. Could you do it in 30 minutes? He's like, definitely not. And so he said, I can do a 3-part series. So this is part 2 of 3. I'm grateful and appreciative for David Hartman for putting this material together. Again, it's a chance for us to just be a community. It's a chance for us to learn. And so thank you guys for coming in and joining us today for this live webinar. I'll remind you, you can post your comments, questions into the chat box. We'll help moderate that. And also at the end, if there's any Q&A, we're welcome you to, we'll open your mics even so you can ask the question, have a discussion. David, it's all yours. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. excuse me, clear the throat. I was just getting a time check. So this is part 2 of a 3-part series. You didn't have to have seen part 1. If those of you that have not seen it, it was just a quick overview of each of the 5 spirits. As Lorne pointed out, that's available for you to still look at until the 6th of December for free. It's also available in my book as well. There's a full chapter on the 5 spirits as well. So where part 1 was just giving you a little snapshot of each of the 5 spirits, part 2 and 3 are treatments. So they're APC or acupuncture point combinations for the 5 spirits, and also some point combinations that can be used to treat all of them, and then some to treat them individually. So as with anything with my talks, I often like to put a little quote in, and this applies really nicely to the 5 spirits as well. So it's from Carl Jung, and it says, "Do not compare, do not measure. No other way is like yours. All other ways deceive and tempt you. You must fulfill the way that is in you." And it's perfect for 5 spirits because they are an inherent part of all of us, and they make us that kind of unique quality. And so each of those 5 will be sort of sitting, they don't likely to all be at around about the same level. They're going to, some will be a little bit excess, some will be a little bit deficient, and you'll move through that space that defines who you are. And if that's done in a way that is for the betterment, I guess, of your development as a person, then that's exactly where you're supposed to be in your life. If it falls a little bit off balance, well, that's where you will find, like this quote, you're moving away from what your balance point is, and you're allowing other things to deceive and tempt you. And this quote itself, even though it's from Carl Jung, and you can see that it was written, within the last 100 years, it's actually got a fair bit of Chinese philosophy about it, a bit of Taoism, a bit of Confucianism even in it. So I really like it. You get a copy of these slides. Also, if you want to email me, I can send them to you as well.
All right. So for those that missed it, part 1 was, as I said, defining the 5 spirits, looking at each of them very briefly. Obviously, over 30 minutes is only a small snapshot. Today, we're going to talk about the figure 8, acupuncture point combination, so the APC acupuncture point combination. We're going to look at the 3 regions of powers, or heaven, earth, human, or Tien, Di, Ren. Acupuncture point combination, there's a few of those. There's also going to be today a look at the Hun and a couple of point combinations, the front, a face-up treatment and a face-down, and also a Shen face-up, face-down treatment as well. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we will look at the kidney spirit gate point combination, the outer bladder spirit points combination, excuse me. And we're also going to look at the other 3 of the 5 spirits, so the Yi, the Po, and the Ji as well. And they'll have a face-up and a face-down treatment as well. I decided to do that because I wasn't sure if you, obviously, for those of you out there, my voice is a bit croaky today. Sorry about that. I don't know if you prefer a face-up treatment or a face-down treatment, so I'm offering both of those. So that's the 5 spirits again. So the figure 8 treatment. So basically with this one, with the research that I've done so far, I haven't seen any other book that has talked about it in exactly the same way that I have. It's something that had been buzzing around in my brain for quite a few years. For those that know me, I don't have any problems with my Hun. I'm dreaming up ideas and processing information all the time. Sometimes my problem is taking the dream and making it reality in my Po. And so I'll get all these great ideas and I'll go, yeah, let's go and do them. And then I'm part way through it and I'll kind of run out of steam and get, oh, here's a new idea. And so I can sometimes get a little bit, I got to nail myself down to really get something finished. So this was something that was humming around, and it popped into my brain one morning after I'd had hardly any sleep. I'd flown from Brisbane, Australia, across to Munich in Germany because I was going to the Rothenburg Congress for the first time. And so I'd had hardly any sleep on the plane. I'd had hardly any sleep that night. And I woke up and I was in a little bit of a vague sense of where I was. I went down to the buffet breakfast and I'm sitting there eating, and then it just popped into my head, this figure eight idea. So I grabbed a coaster, which was what the juice was sitting on top of, and I flipped the coaster over. I had a pen with me because I always carry a pen around with me in case of these situations. And I started to write down the idea of it, and it evolved from that. And it wasn't a flight of fancy. It wasn't something that just kind of happened. It evolved over a lot of clinical experience years. I've been treating patients since 1994, so it's not something that just popped up. But that's where it sort of evolved from. And that happens to me a bit. Sometimes things cruising around in the brain and then they just finally merge together and create this kind of idea. So I've been searching literature for something that is kind of similar, I guess, but nothing that's exactly like this. So let's look at it. So it's a design that is specifically set to rebalance the five spirits. And this is a combination that is looking at balancing out all five. Now, obviously, if one of the five spirits is really chronic, then it will start, but will take longer to balance out, whereas some that are more acute, newer manifestations, they should correct themselves a lot faster. And so, as I sort of mentioned in part one a couple of weeks ago, but also earlier, even just in this talk, we tend to all have a bit of an imbalance in our five spirits. And it comes down to sort of how we live our life and how we're pushed and pulled in different directions. It could just be a case of us getting in the car and driving to work, and some goose cuts us off in traffic and we get cranky, and that flips one of our five spirits, for example. It's simple little things like that. And that's what I'm sort of saying here. So these factors, how we get pushed and pulled, we tend to fall into a favourite response to different events that happen in our life as well. And that's often because of which one of the five spirits dominates the others. So some will tend to drive into excess, which will push others into deficiency. And that's because none of them can all be excess at the same time, and not all of them can really be deficient at the same time. We tend to have a bit sort of moving in between the levels. So the figure eight combination that I'm going to show you is one of multiple ways you can approach it. So I'll show you the combination in the next few minutes, but you can play with the design a little bit as long as you stick to the theme of what we're looking at, which we'll get to in a minute. The idea, though, is that it's better that you've done a few treatments before you do this one, just to start to get the patient towards a more balanced state. You don't have to get them to a perfect health, just start them on that journey. We have tried at workshops, when I go around the world and do workshops, some countries like me to do theory and practical workshops. Other countries like me to just do theory. So when we do the practical workshops, when I talk about the figure eight, the participants then do the figure eight on each other. Now, in that instance, they've not probably had multiple treatments before that treatment, obviously, to get themselves to that more balanced state, and they still get good results from it. So that is showing me that it is available as an option to do on people as an initial treatment. But I have found that consistently in my clinic, patients will respond better to this combination if you have done some pre-treatments first. So the figure eight is designed in such a way that you visualize the two yin-yang symbols. The top being fire is more Shen. The bottom being water is more willpower or Qi. The middle being earth is Yi. Now, metal in this instance of this picture is that it's the blue one. So it's represented here as top right, bottom left, and that's Po. And then obviously wood is yang or red, so it's represented as top left and bottom right. So that basically means, you will have a point at the top, you'll have a point at the bottom, a point in the middle, and you'll have 2 more points at each level. But in addition to that, you can see with this picture, you've got 4 more arrows. So those points are further balanced to create links between all of them. So you visualize the figure 8 being that it's going around. And so as it goes around, it's targeting all of those points. But there's also what I call sort of shortcuts, where instead of going all the way from the top, all the way around to the bottom, hope that you can see that, you can cut through the middle on both of those parts of the figure 8, and then 2 on either side as a further balance point. So this is the combination that I am using at the moment. It does change if the patient doesn't fit the point. Okay, so that there will be situations where the points will adjust slightly, but the rule is basically that you have to make sure that you've got a point, at least one, if not multiple, for each of the 5 spirits. And so if we look at them, the highest point on the body is Do 20, so it's going to treat the Shen. We've got the lowest point on the body, Kidney 1, so it's going to work on the G. And then we've got, combinations within all the rest of that figure 8. We've got a number of Ren points, Ren 5, Ren 12, Ren 17. Ren 12 is the Yi, it's the one sitting in the middle. And then we had the Ren 17 and the Ren 5 as the shortcut through the figure 8, if that makes sense. If this doesn't make complete sense, again, I'm trying to talk about something that needs more time than this. So please feel free to email me. I'll give you the email addresses on the side of each slide, but also at the end. We can spend a bit more time chatting about it via email. But that's what's happening there. So the Ren 17 is a pivot point. So it's going to treat multiple spirits. Spleen 21 was the one on either side. So where the figure 8 goes around, they were in the middle at either side. And then we have the lung 3 for Po, gallbladder 40 for Hun. And then we have the 4 gates, the large intestine 4, liver 3, as the further balance point between the Hun and the Po. If you were here for part 1, you will have known that the Hun and the Po have a very good connection together. So kind of when you treat one, you will invariably end up treating the other as well. So it looks like a lot of points, but there are a lot of points there that are only one. They're not bilateral pairings. So if you look at the combination in total, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16 needles in total. You could potentially unilateral some of these if you wanted to. Say the 4 gates, you could unilateral a large intestine 4, liver 3. I don't think 16 needles is too many. It is bordering on a fringe of how many I'm likely to put in a person. I tend to stick around about 8 to 16 needles in my patients per treatment. So as you can see, basically it's a full connection between all of them. All right. The next one is the 3 powers or regions, and they are referring to heaven, earth, human. So Tian, Di, Ren, and they are triumvirate of Chinese medicine. So as the 75th essay of the Ling Shu states, man or human, I've got my throat again, get my healthy seminars mug. Man or human is a triad with heaven and earth. Ren is typically translated as man. To make it not sexist, we are referring to it as human. Now, according to Deadman, the 3 regions refer to heaven, earth, and human. But with Bertzinger, both the 3 regions and the 3 powers refer to heaven, earth, and human. And this is in reference to his ancient text translations. And they are referred to in the Great or Grand Compendium, or the Zhenju Da Chang, which was written in 1601. So there's a couple of quotes. So the 3 regions ode or poem says, above, middle, and below are the 3 regions, and they are spleen 21, stomach 25, and spleen 8. And I'll put that combination in shortly in a table. Whereas the 3 powers ode says that do 20 is a point on the head, it echoes heaven. Ren 21 is a point on the breast, it echoes man or human. And kidney 1 comes through 2 points on the sole of the foot, which echoes earth, and they are the 3 powers. So on the table here, you'll see them listed. Now, personally, I've tried both of these combinations. I'm preferring the 3 powers combination. But here's the thing. I like to play with combinations to try to find one that sits better in my slot, better in terms of what I'm seeing results from. And so what I've actually now started to do is move spleen 21 from the 3 regions and plonk it into the 3 powers. I don't take anything out of that one, but I add that spleen 21 in. So what I now have is 6 needles. I have my do 20, I have my Ren 21 plus spleen 21, and also the kidney 1. And I've found, or what I believe is a better outcome with that spleen 21 added in. The reason that I feel that is that spleen 21 is called Da Bao, which translates as great embrace. And the great embrace is that it embraces heaven or Tien, it embraces earth, and it embraces ourselves, gives us a big hug. And in actual fact, I teach point location or have taught point location a lot over the years. And one of the ways to find spleen 21 is that you give yourself a hug, and you probably can't see this. It's where your middle finger ends up when you give yourself a hug, which is why spleen 21 isn't always defined as being below a particular rib. So there's an interesting one. So it gives all 3 regions or 3 powers a hug. So I've added that one into the combination. You can also add more points. If you think that 6 or 4 needles is not enough, then look at what you're trying to do and think about the points that you understand treat heaven, earth, human, and round out the treatment with some more points. So heaven, earth, human, in case you weren't aware, so just very quickly, I'll look at a quick summary before we move on. So there's 3 inherent aspects of ourselves that make up our microcosm. So heaven, earth, human. And that's replicated in our macrocosm. So this is a big Chinese medicine kind of concept of a microcosm to a macrocosm. Sandro mentioned it last week in his talk as well, briefly. So let's look at each of them a little bit more closely. So heaven or Tien is translated typically as heaven, but sometimes celestial or sky. They're the main ones. So sometimes you'll see them referred to as windows of heaven or windows of the sky. That's a group of points that tend to treat heavenly aspects of ourselves, but also that they're higher up the body, so closer to heaven. So this is where we have access to our greatest or grandest dreams. It's where our inspiration resides, and up here anything is possible. Because whether you call it heaven, universal chi, God, great spirit, whatever, it's unlimited. It's that space out off of us, and up there anything is possible. So dream your grandest dreams. And that's where the Hun resides. So this concept of Tien or heaven is also where you get your ideas, your inspiration. Earth is also called land, place, or territory, but typically only gets translated as earth. And this is where we take our dreams and we make them reality. So it's where we get our stuff done. It's where we perform action and work. But it's also our non-action. Sorry about today with my throat. So we action when we're supposed to act, and we non-act. We stop when it's time to stop. We don't want to be action all the time. We want to be able to shut down when it's time to sleep, for example. Can you imagine how hard it would be to sleep if you're not shutting down? If your brain's not shutting down, if your body's not shutting down. And the Po is down here, so that's where the action happens. Basically, we dream an idea in Tien or the Hun. We come down into our body and it filters through the Shen, the Yi, and Ji. So we basically take a dream and we decide in our body if the dream should become reality for our own betterment of our development as a person. And if we action it, so we decide, yep, that dream is reality, it goes down to the Po where it becomes the action. So the human part of that is those other three spirits. So you can see that obviously the Tien, Di, Ren is a very important part of what makes us who we are, but also connects very nicely with the five spirits. It's classic Chinese medicine. Numbers that shouldn't match, but still do. We've got three, the triumvirate, so heaven, earth, human, three, matching five spirits in this instance. So it regulates or balances out our heaven, earth, human. It gives each of these parts a big hug. I always visualize that, giving heaven a hug, earth a hug, and ourselves a hug. Embrace your regions or powers and love or respect them because they are for what they are, because they are you. They are you. And if you appreciate them as being part of you, then you will live in your truth. You won't live in other people's truths. You'll live in your power and in your truth. And then your microcosmic self will be more balanced, which will then resonate so much more effectively with the macrocosm. All right, so let's look quickly at a couple of treatments for Hun and then for Shen, and then we are done for today.
David, before you go on, I just find that so amazing. So this is discussed in Chinese medicine. Focus on your microcosm, and then it will show up in the macrocosm. Is that how I heard it? Because
yes.
That's the whole art of manifestation. Get your inner world vibrating change, and then it will get reflected in the external world. It's just interesting that the new science of consciousness or manifestation, which seems very new in the last 100, 200 years, this is discussed in our text thousands of years ago. Yeah. Unbelievable. That's just had a unbelievable moment. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Lorne. So if you're more a face-up treatment style, then this is a possible scenario for you for treating the Hun. And this is where we've looked at, oh my goodness, today. So this is where we've looked at this morning for me, we've looked at two scenarios where you can regulate all of the five spirits. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll look at two more. And now we're looking at individual ones. So if you've defined that the person has a Hun imbalance, then you can look at treating this. And the beauty of this is it doesn't matter if they're deficient or excess. You can use this combination to regulate that imbalance. And the same will apply for the face down treatment. If you want to be more specific and really target an excess or deficiency, these will do that, but you might want to tweak the points a little bit more if you feel like you need to. So this is 14 needles. You can see that there's a combination here of points that aren't all in the one spot. I'm a big fan of having points sensibly scattered around the body. So we've got something on the head, on the trunk, on the arms, and then on the legs and the feet. So we've got a point that's highest on the body to access the Hun, so do 20. We have the lowest point, which helps to regulate the balance point between the Hun, the Shan, and even the Po. And it regulates energy up and down the body. And then obviously with the Hun being housed as part of the wood element, you're going to probably find that there's a few liver and gallbladder points on their channels or related to those organs. So we have a front Mu point and a Yuan source point for liver, so liver 3, liver 14. Then we've got a couple more that anchor the Hun in the liver. So that's Ren 4 and also liver 8. We have the Yuan source point for the gallbladder, which is gallbladder 40, and it stimulates the Hun movement as well. And so you're seeing, and then pericardium 6, of course, because it'll move liver qi, calms the Shen, but really helps to regulate the way our brain works. So if it's really, really going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, it just lets it off a bit and just chills us out. But if there's nothing there at all, it helps to stimulate function in our brain or / Shen to give us that inspiration again. So that's a combination that you can look at here. Again, it's 14 needles, so that might be too many for you or not enough. So depending on your experience, you can add or take away additional points. And again, depending on the patient at any given point, I might not use exactly that combination. I'm going to treat the person as that person that they are when they come in. So if some points need to change, then they can change. Don't have to set, it's not set in stone. Remember, treat the person, not the disease. Now, if you face down, you can still get to some of those same points. You can still get to do 20. You can still get to kidney 1. You can still get gallbladder 40. You can still get peri 6 and liver 3. Liver 3, obviously, you need to prop the ankles up with a bolster so that the feet raise up, and then you can get the needle into the feet. And then don't forget the needle's in there because it's out of sight. So out of sight, out of mind. Don't forget liver 3 is still in the patient's foot, or they'll get up with the needle still in. I won't tell you how I know that, by the way. I might have done that once, only once. So we have the back shoe point for liver, which is bladder 18, instead of the front move this time because they're face down. And then the Hun gate, bladder 47. So in 2 weeks' time, we look at these outer bladder spirit points in more detail, and bladder 47 is in that list. So this is 15 needles this time, give or take. If you don't want to put liver 3 in because it's complicated when they're face down or whatever, that'd put you to 13 needles. Looking at that combination, you wouldn't ruin the treatment by leaving out a point like liver 3 because you've got spleen 6 there. And spleen 6 is good because the liver, kidney, and spleen channels all pass through spleen 6. So that's another possible scenario there. And then we've got the Shen to finish off. So there are so many points you could use for Shen. So this is one little snapshot of it. Now, when you look at this, you might go straight away, that's 3 needles in the head. I don't like doing 3 needles in the head. So then leave one out. I don't mind having do 20, do 24 and yin tang personally, but some people don't like having both the do 24 and the yin tang. So then just choose one or the other with your do 20 in, or some of you don't like do 20 probably. So in that case, you can use do 24 and yin tang and leave out do 20. It's not the end of the world if it's not there. The Shen is housed in the heart, and so we want the front move point of the heart. Now, we've got some other possibles. Ren 15 I like, Ren 17 is another option that I haven't listed there. I might even add it in sometimes. There's only 13 needles, so I could add that in and it would be 14. Or if you left out one of the head points, then you're back to 12, so you could add in the Ren 17. Ren 15 I really like. I call it my unofficial front move point of the Shen. I find it fascinatingly awesome for treating the Shen. But having 14, 15, and 17 is really, really powerful for the heart, the pericardium, and the Shen. In this instance, I've got a lot of heart and pericardium points on the arms. If you think that's too stacked, then you might leave one out, put something in on the legs. There's a lot of Shen calming points on the legs. Spleen 6 is one example. So you might leave out a heart point and put in spleen 6. It's up to you. And then face down. I've kept do 20, but now I've added in also gallbladder 20 and bladder 10. They are obviously at the back of your head, at the base of the skull, are great points for calming the Shen. If you don't want to put all of those in bilaterally, that would be 4 needles at the base of the skull, then just pick one. Gallbladder 20 probably would be preferable to me over bladder 10 in this instance, but it's an option. Got the back shoe point for the heart. It's a no-brainer. And then bladder 44 is the Shen temple. So it's the outer bladder spirit point, again, talked about in more detail in a couple of weeks. And then in the arms and hands, we've kept a couple from the last face-up treatment because we can. And typically when they're face down, you can still access these points, regardless of whether their head's in a hole and their arms are in front of them or their arms are at their sides. In total, that's 15 needles. I like the look of that. You might want to do a few dew points along the spine that treat the Shen. There's quite a few there that are quite helpful. Do 10, 12, for example. That's up to you. But that's another little snapshot. So that's basically it, really. And again, the idea always with the point combinations that I give you is kind of twofold, really. One is that you can use them as is, and you could use them today in your clinic. If you're in Australia or New Zealand like me, where the day is just starting, you could run into a patient where this suits perfectly and you use it as is. Or two, you play with it a bit and mold it to fit your style of treatment. Take some out, add some in, whatever. It's like a template, a blueprint for you to work off that works as is, but also can be played with to suit your style. So that's it for today. The same sort of finish off. Obviously, they're the two books that I have written so far in my career. The Principles and Practical Application of Acupuncture Point Combinations is very, very thick book. It's got some of what we've talked about today. And then the other one is Acupoint Dictionary. This is an A to Z of disorders. You just look it up in alphabetical order and has the points you use. Whereas this one teaches you how to construct your points. There's some links for you, and there's my email address if you want to get in contact with me. That's the best Facebook site for me, which will tell you where I am once the world opens up again. I woke up this morning and saw that there's some vaccines out and about, so they may very well, hopefully, speed up everyone back into the world again. We shall see. And then my references as well, which you're welcome to look at anytime. So that's basically it. I thank you very much. Apologies for going a smidge over time, but thank you so much, and I hope that you'll come back for part 3. I also have other series on healthy seminars as well. I have 2 series that are 10 hours each that are worth the CPD points or whatever you call them in your part of the world. And there's a third one coming early in the new year as well. And I think the third one is 10 hours on 5 elements and how you treat using acupuncture point combinations. So, yeah, thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'll have a little look.
We got some questions for you, so hold on one sec. So I'm going to bring the questions. First of all, a big thank you to David. So David, thank you very much for putting this together. Again, I love the fact that we can get together from, you're in Australia, I'm in Vancouver, and all over the world. As we go to the Q&A, I'm going to pull up the questions that we actually have. I do want to remind you, if you want to watch this replay or tell your friends about it, just come to the resource page on Healthy Seminars and click on this link, and it will take you to the replay. The one that he did in November, part 1 of 2 is there. And you can also sign up for his part 3 of this series. And then to remind you that until December 6th, all recorded online courses are on sale at 30% off with coupon code CYBER30. Including David's courses. And David has actually another free lecture. This is an hour talk on the Acupuncture Point Combinations on his bio page that you can watch. And I just want to let you know, these are some of the courses he currently has, and he's adding more on Acupuncture Point Combinations for regulating emotions and stress and mental health. He has one on the 8 extras in the same topic and one for fertility as well. So if you're interested in how David teaches and want more of his material, they're on sale until Sunday, December 6th. Unless you're from New Zealand or Australia, that's until Monday, December 7th for those guys. And the coupon code is CYBER30. All right, let's do some of these questions for you, David. So let me just pull that up. One of the first question was, what do you mean by the pre-treatments? You were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, so pre-treatments, patient comes in and you treat the person, not the disease. So you would treat them exactly the way that you would. So in Australia, we teach diagnostics as the Zhang Fu, patterns of disharmony. Other parts of the world will tend to do 5-element diagnostics. I've seen some colleges that focus on, say, Shanghan Lun or 6th division diagnostics. So depending on your diagnosis, you just treat them exactly for what they need to try to get them a little bit more balanced before you start the figure 8. It just seems to work better if the patient has had even one treatment where you just treat the underlying issues with your base level diagnostics. And then when they come in next time, things seem to, the figure 8 works more effectively in that instance. Some combinations, it doesn't matter so much. And with figure 8, you don't have to. You can do it as a first treatment, but it just seems to work a bit better if you've done at least one or a couple of treatments as your base level, whatever you would do for that patient at that point in time.
And then was there an order of how you insert the needles and how you remove the needles for this treatment?
Yes. I don't usually get too worried about that. With the 8 extraordinary vessels, for example, I do put the needles in order. Opening point first, couple point first, rest of the points, and then reverse it on the way out. With these, for me, it's the combination itself that matters. And so really doesn't matter what order you put the needles in, because once they're all in, then they sit there for however long that you have your needles in for. So might be 20 to 40 minutes, whatever it is that you do. And it's the combination. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, Lorne mentioned that to me. It's a Aristotle quote, but it resonates so perfectly with this. It's the combination that matters, less so the order that the needles are put in and taken out.
Okay. And if somebody wanted a confirmation, you're talking about inserting needle liver 3, then kidney 1. They have this idea of needling kidney 1 through liver 3. So do liver 3 and go deep and get to kidney 1. Does that resonate for you? At sound like an okay idea?
We do teach that as an advanced needle technique in 4th year at Endeavour College. So that's one option. That reduces the needle use by 2. The number of needles you're using. It's strong, but I mean, kidney 1 can hurt. And if you've gone from liver 3 through to kidney 1, then you've stopped the needle having to go into kidney 1. So one could argue that there's a gain there. So I can see a value in that. Personally, I'm unlikely to do that, but I can see value.
Okay. Could Heart 1 be used?
Wow, there's an interesting. You can certainly use Heart 1. That's a very underused point. Heart 1, I tend to use less for emotions. I use it a lot for frozen shoulder and shoulder problems, especially the deltoid, because you're coming at it from a different direction. But Heart 1 is an option for regulating and helping out the Shen. I'm probably not going to use it as a first or second choice, but it's an option.
And then the last question is, what about using this combination but doing acupressure? Any thoughts on that, stimulating the points with acupressure?
Yeah, I love acupressure. I'm a big hands-on therapist. I'm very much, we refer to it more as tuina at the colleges that I teach at. So tuina is still just acupressure, really. But definitely I do a series of tuina or acupressure techniques before I do acupuncture on almost every single person. If you don't do acupuncture and you just push the points, you are still going to get some really good value out of it. So yes, I'm definitely a big fan of acupressure or tuina. Yeah, I tend to push them each point. And then what I would tend to do is I'd push both liver 3s at the same time. And if you can get to kidney 1 with your thumbs and your fingers on liver 3 or vice versa, you've got basically 4 points stimulating at the one time. And I'll stimulate for 30 seconds to a minute, do every other point, tend to go back and do them all a second time. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, David. Now, everybody, you're able to unmute yourself. So as part of the Community Unity Immunity series, we always ask you to unmute yourselves and first send your love and appreciation to David for preparing this lecture for us and sharing it, and then connect with each other. This is our chance to say hello and hi to each other.